Today we're going to be installing the first mods that everybody should do to their GR Corolla. The first and cheapest mod you can do to your 2023 GR Corolla is our overlay pack. These are $25 and you get 3 overlays for the rear of the car here, and it takes about 5 minutes to install. The second modification we're going to be doing today is studs and wheels. We have 18 by 10 inch wheels here, and we also fit a 285 tire on this, which is like pretty large considering what other people are putting on the car, but we'll be installing those as well. Let's get into our first mod of the two, and that'll be our rear taillight overlays. Now what you'll need to prep is some soapy water and a microfiber towel. Step 1 is prep. Just spritz a little bit of soapy water on there. Now what you want to do is get your surface a little bit wet here. That way you can move this around. You don't have to get it perfect right away, but line it up as best you can. And go ahead and take your microfiber. Just kind of work it in. Now you can also use a heat gun with this, and that'll help shrink the overlay, because there is, in the taillights, there's actually like little tiny logos that they put in there, and you'll notice that once you're putting it on. But a heat gun will shrink it around that logo. But a heat gun is not required for this install. So now that side's all done and dry, go ahead and grab this piece next. You can kind of line it up with the car first, you just see how the orientation is, and then repeat that step. Just get it nice and wet. On this, it's pretty easy to start at one end and kind of just slowly lay it on and work it the other way. It's okay to re-peel them and re-stick them as well. That's what they're made for. Go ahead and work those bubbles out, but there is a logo, or a little stamp right there, probably like 2 inches from the right side, so don't worry about it. Get the rest of the air bubbles out. It'll still stick. The last one will be this rear side marker. This one has a ton of stamping into it. It has like a really long line of words here. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but don't worry about it. The overlay will stay on. We've had this on the previous car that we had, and it lives through washes and all the things like that. So don't worry about the stamping. Now that this side's done, let's go ahead and repeat those same steps on the other side, and you should be good to go. Now that the taillight overlays are done, we are going to be raising the car up and putting on brand new extended studs, and we'll be showing you what tools are needed to do the process. Coming over here to our tool bench, we will be needing a 3/8 breaker bar, a hammer, a smaller ratchet, and then for your axle nut, you'll have a 30 mil 12 point. And then to take the wheel off itself, 21 mil on an impact gun will work, or you can use the breaker bar with the car on the ground. And then for the studs themselves, they use Lexus IS300 studs. I know this has been gate kept from the market for a while now, but Lexus IS300, that's all you need right there. And the reason for this is from factory, the studs are just not long enough, so we're gonna have to upgrade the studs when we upgrade the wheel. Starting at the front of the car, because they are a little bit different, in the front you will be removing the axle, and in the rear you do not have to remove the axle. It's just so you can get to the bolts behind the wheel bearing. All right, so starting in the front, we're going to be doing the caliper, the axle nut, and then pulling the rotor off of the assembly. Then we'll be doing the lower control arm, and we'll be swinging it out so we can get the axle pulled out of the car. The nice thing about working on this brand new car is no rust. So all the bolts just come right out. It's kind of nice. We're going to be removing this caliper, and then we'll hang it up to probably the strut. And then once that's off, then we can pull the rotor off and remove the axle nut. Now that we have the caliper sported and the rotor taken off, we have 4 17 mil bolts that we have to take off. 3 will be on the bottom here on the lower control arm, and then 1 will be this end link nut right here. These 2 nuts and 1 bolt. There we go. All right, now that we got those 4 bolts taken out, we'll be removing this 30 mil 12 point axle nut. When removing the axle, you're just gonna wanna tap the end with a hammer. Don't hit it too hard, or you can use like a rubber mallet or something. It's just to break it loose. You don't need to mushroom it and break it. All Is it really not gonna come?
Not really moving.
I know. I can't go any further.
What do you got going on?
I can't go any further, guy.
Well, you need to go further.
Oh, you're gonna catch my finger, huh?
Go.
There we go. Now with the axle pulled out, there's enough space in the back to get the 19 mil bolts that hold the wheel bearing onto the knuckle itself off. So we just remove those 3 19 mils, and then this should just slide off, and we'll be able to press out the old studs. Make sure you're holding onto this wheel bearing while you're taking these bolts out, because you really do not want these to, or want this to fall. Oh, caught it. All right, now that we got the wheel bearing out, we're gonna take it over to the bench there, and then we're gonna just use a hammer and tap out each stud. Then we'll run it home with our stud install tool. Okay. Nothing's breaking. Everything's fine. All right, so for this part, you're just gonna throw your dust shield on before the wheel bearing, get everything lined up, and then run that top bolt in first, and then it'll allow you to be more hands-free and line everything else up, so. Now that all that is in, we can put the axle back through the wheel hub, or the wheel bearing, sorry. You ready?
That's in the way. More.
More.
Okay.
Oh, nice. All right. Throw your axle nut on there, and we will pull it home with the axle nut. Now that you have your axle back in, you can go ahead and zip those 17 mils in your lower control arm back in, as well as the sway bar end link up top here. All right guys, just a quick tip or a reminder if you will, your brake line will go on the inside of your sway bar end link. So your end link will be closer to the car and your brake line will be wrapped around your actual strut. Go ahead and get that last 17 on there. Send it home. And don't forget your little cap. Slide them back on just like that. And then you'll take your final 2 17 mils and we will be reinstalling on the caliper mount. All right, and just like that, you have your extended wheel studs installed and you are ready for your brand new wheel. Also, it is important to note, we have these hub-centric adapters that we will be putting on before this. Do not forget this step if your wheel needs it. It can cause a lot of issues, so just don't forget it. Let's throw this new wheel on. That looks pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie. We're just going finger tight with these lug nuts here. Make sure nothing's cross-threaded. Also, now that you have aftermarket wheels and aftermarket studs, get some aftermarket lugs as well. You have to. The OEM ones will not fit with it, so. Again, don't tighten it down all the way. Just get everything started. Torque it on the ground. The fitment, everything, when you put it on the ground, that fitment is gonna be perfect. These are 18 by 10 plus 35s. That is the Corolla fitment that we went with. We wanted a little bit more tire for the track. So we did throw some 285s on this thing, so we have some really meaty tires, and it'll allow us to push through corners a lot better. So, all right guys, now that we're all done with the front, we're gonna be moving on to the rear where it is just slightly different, so make sure you follow along. All right, now we're in the rear of the car. We'll be taking the wheel off. You do not have to remove the axle this time, so we'll be doing something slightly different, so make sure you follow along and we'll get to it. All right, so we're gonna be removing the brakes again. and then taking this off, your rotor. And then instead of removing the axle, all you have to do is there's 4 bolts holding the actual wheel bearing on. We're just gonna have to hit those bolts. The axle boot is not in the way, so that's why you don't have to take the axle out. All right, go ahead and grab your 17 and your breaker bar, and then we're gonna hit these caliper bolts. These hang from your brake lines either. If this is your first time working on a car, you will damage your brake lines. So if you can, just kind of find a spot where you can hang it up, or get some mechanics wire or something, and you can normally hang it from the strut tower, or like the shock here, or anything like that. But for this application, it should be fine just resting right there. Grab our 32 mil. All right, so there is 4 17 mils in the back here. And once we get those out, then the whole wheel bearing assembly should just pull straight out. So let's get to it. All right, for this wheel bearing, at least on the rearmost side, you can use I think this is a 3-inch extension and then a 14 mil small socket, and it fits right in there. There's no need for a swivel or anything like that. So now, all we need to do is just tap the axle loose, and then the bearing should just pull right out. There you go. I'm a visual learner, and it'll just be easier for me to explain it this way, but in case you guys need to see it for yourselves, these are the 4 bolts, the purple ones here with the slot in them, and then your bearing is keyed, so it can only go on one way. You can see it on there, so pretty easy to do. You just knock the axle out, and then it pulls right out. Oh, with those new studs installed, let's go throw it back on the car. All right, we're back over to the car. We're gonna be installing our wheel bearing. So the first step is you're gonna have to press the wheel bearing back over the splines. And then once it's in the splines, you can actually rotate the back part and line it up where you need it. And then just push it all the way home, just like that. Wait on the axle nut, and then get these in just barely, just finger tight, and then go ahead and put that axle nut on. And everything should be able to be finger tightened all the way down. It's a brand new car, nothing's rusty, so if you're feeling any resistance, go ahead and stop, back it out, retry it, because more than likely it's cross-threaded. All right, go ahead and grab you a 3/8 ratchet and tighten down those bolts. Now that all that is installed, we can go ahead and throw the rotor back on, throw the caliper on, and then it'll be ready for the wheel. Also guys, with the rear rotors, these cars come with a 10 mil spacer from the factory. So go ahead and remove that, and then we'll be installing the wheel. All right, now that you got your spacer off, go ahead and just put that rotor back on, maybe. And then we can drop the caliper back on and throw the wheel on. Don't forget your hub-centric ring. Go ahead and place that on there. Let's see how these rears look. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys learned a thing or two about installing new wheels on this car. If you would like to purchase the studs or the overlays, they will be on our website, offlineperformance.com. Make sure you guys stay tuned in the upcoming months because we have a lot of Corolla content rolling out with all of these new products that we've been developing. So go ahead and drop a like and leave a comment on what you guys would like to see more on this car. We'll be taking it to the track this year, as well as doing some testing against other bone stock Corollas versus our Corolla with our downpipe, catback, and all of our other parts that we'll be putting on it in the future. Thank you guys. Have a good one.